Bless our panel with wisdom, discernment, and clarity as they address some of the complex and perplexing issues surrounding artificial intelligence and its societal implications. We pray for divine favor upon the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Ex-Teachers Association, our moderator, Vendor Cyrus, our virtual audience, our technical crew, and all who have worked behind the scenes to make this event possible. Grant that we will approach this discussion with open minds and that it will be constructive, meaningful, and respectful. May it be a source of enlightenment and growth for all participants as we seek to honor your name and build a sense of community and purpose. Thank you, Father. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Mercury. And on behalf of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Ex-Teachers Association, I wish to welcome us all.
This meeting is being recorded.
Those of us who are in our homes, or those of us who are in other persons' homes or at work, wherever you may be, welcome to our presentation for Black History Month in the United States of America. But Black History Month is just about universal now. Thanks for your presence. And before we get started with the actual panel discussion, the topic of which deals with artificial intelligence, I would just like us to bear in mind that this program is being carried live, and we should be very conscious and conscientious in terms of our language and our etiquette, not just what we say and do, but in terms of how we say and do. And it may be pertinent, it may be appropriate for us sometimes because we're in our homes to mute ourselves, or even sometimes to turn our video off, depending on what's happening in the background, so that we do not become too distracting. Of course, the use of proper language, not just in terms of avoiding what we call bad words and curses, but just respect for each other, because we are here to learn. Our motto is together for growth, to learn, to teach, and to help. And we hope to accomplish that during this evening. So, without further ado, I would like to pass the rest of the evening, at least this part of it, to our moderator, Vendor Cyrus, who will introduce the panelists and will have the discussion going forward.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name, as you heard, is Vendor Cyrus. And tonight I'm going to be the moderator for this panel discussion. I just want to say, President of the SVG, Ex-Teachers Association, USA Inc., and all the other members of ex-teachers, panelists, and members of the audience, a pleasant good night and welcome to our panel discussion. As you just heard, the topic is about AI. And so I just want to say tonight, as we gather here at a pivotal moment in history, a moment when decisions about artificial intelligence will affect our schools, our jobs, our local economy, and the future of our children. This is not just a technological conversation. It is an environmental conversation. Artificial intelligence, AI, is no longer a futuristic concept. It is embedded in our classrooms, workplaces, healthcare systems, creative industries, and even our democratic processes. Before we talk about what AI is doing to our society, it is worth grounding ourselves in what we mean by artificial intelligence. NASA defines artificial intelligence as the capability of computational systems to perform tasks typically associated with human intelligence, such as learning, reasoning, problem solving, perception, and decision making. This definition is important because it reminds us that AI isn't just about automation and efficiency. It is about systems that increasingly shape judgments, choices, and opportunities. From tools developed by organizations like OpenAI to innovation emerging from Google DeepMind, AI systems are shaping how we learn, work, communicate, and compete. The central question before us is both urgent and complex. Does AI level the playing field? And what are the implications for society? We often hear that AI levels the playing field and that it democratizes access to knowledge, amplifies human capability, and gives individuals and small organizations powers once reserved for largest institutions. But history reminds us well that every transformative technology, from the printing press to the internet, both open and quietly reinforce new forms of inequality. To ground this conversation, we will start on the perspective of where our AI is already shaping access and opportunities. So our esteemed astute panelists will each give a brief commentary on the subject. And afterwards, the conversation will expand with audience participation, including questions, comments, and observation. There might be persons here present with first-hand information that will shed light on the subject. Therefore, audience participation is strongly encouraged. After all, our motto is, and that means the SVG, Ex-Teachers Association, USA Inc., motto is together for growth, to learn, to teach, and to help. Without further ado, we shall hear from our first panelist, who is Dr. Gary Michael Denny. And I will do his brief bio that he sent for us. Dr. Gary Michael Denny earned a first degree in English and history at the University of the West Indies and a PhD in African history at Johns Hopkins University. He is a specialist in the history of apartheid and the greatest privilege of his life wrote for Nelson Mandela when he was released from prison. Mr. Denny is also a specialist in Garifuna and Vincentian history and aligned with Dr. Cleve Scott and Dr. Adrian Fraser, has just published groundbreaking work on the history of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, entitled Native Peoples genocide, and African enslavement in SDG. Tonight, I present to you our first panelist, Dr. Gary Michael Denny.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and good night, everyone. As a specialist in African history, as a specialist in Caribbean history, and in the moment that we have here, which is to look at the issue of technology, AI technology in particular, to look at this technology in the context of leveling playing fields. With Black History Month being the context within which this conversation is about to unfold, it is important to remember that technology has been fundamental to human progress. As a historian, I would probably tell you that the first technological breakthrough in the history of humanity was making a stone tool, that transforming stone into tools that we could use to do any number of things that we couldn't possibly do with hands. And I could also say that technology began in Africa. And so the first kinds of breakthrough in the history of humanity using technology to improve our lives, Africa is the birthplace of the first human inventiveness in making our lives better by creating tools and so on. But we also know that,
and here's the reality, I don't think that it's radical to say that people can have a living wage.
To know that across the history of humanity, technology has not been equal in the dispersal of its bountifulness. Some people have benefited enormously. Others have suffered immensely. And in this particular instance, people of African descent, who are equally gifted as any other community in the world to create innovative technologies, we are the ones who have been most burdened in terms of the unequal disposition or distribution of the goodies that come with technological invention. And so in that sense, the broader question as to whether AI levels the playing field or not, and in the context of Black History Month, is crucial because it acknowledges that in the history of technology, Black people haven't always been the beneficiaries of the technologies that have come before this moment that we currently inhabit. So as to the specificity of AI and as to what this might mean for us, I want to frame for you a particular scenario so that you're in your house, perhaps in Brooklyn, perhaps like I am in Maryland, and you decide that I want to go to Vinceland, I want to go home, okay? And so you speak to some computer system in your house called Alexa, and you say, Alexa, I want to go home on March the 11th. And Alexa says, okay, I'm going to check for a ticket for you. And Alexa says, okay, you will fly into St. Vincent on March the 11th using, American Airlines 512. So, well, how are you going to get to the airport? Alexa says, I will call you a taxi. Okay. And the taxi would come at 5:15 on the day of your flight, 4 hours or 5 hours before the flight begins. And you said, okay. And at 5:15, your doorbell rings and you go to see this taxi. The taxi is there, but there is no driver. And the door opens and you go into the taxi, and the taxi says, where are you going? I'm heading to the airport. So the taxi takes you to the airport. And so you go to the airport and you meet a machine which says, do you have your passport with you? You say, no, I don't. The machine says that's okay. I can simply look at your face or your eyes and we'll know whether you're free to travel. This is what happens. So you put your face by the machine, it looks at your eyes, and then the gate opens, you're allowed to go. Then you have to go onto the plane, okay? And a number is called over the over speaker, which says that if you're sitting in seat 22A, you can get onto the plane. And so you leave and you get onto that plane. You go onto the plane, and the plane at some point is gonna take off. The plane has no pilot, human pilot, but the plane takes off and the plane lands you in St. Vincent without a human pilot. And the same process that you use to enter the airport repeats itself as you have to depart the Vincentian Airport. And once again, there's a driverless car at the curb that would take you to your home. How is this possible? All of this is possible through artificial intelligence that eliminates the presence of a human being and that human contact right there at that moment, taking you through those steps where you leave New York and it is to what the moderator demonstrated in the first definition of what constitutes AI, that it is a set of capabilities generated through computers, through computer skills that replaces human being in a number of areas. And hence, if we understand that fact, that AI represents the capacity to replace human beings or do jobs that human beings would previously have done in ways that had not been conceived before, then we could go on to ask the next question: who are the beneficiaries or who are the sufferers? And in the context of the history of Black people, we have known that all technologies haven't benefited Black people equally. And that is where I would leave my beginning comment on AI and Black History Month. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Denny, for a very succinct explanation of what is AI and how it can affect us as a people. So before we do any questions, and I appreciate where you said that the question is before us is, how is AI going to affect us, especially as a people, like Black people? We sometimes tend to be the last set of people to grasp things. We like to see things before us, but we always wait until it is really open up, take off, and then we start lagging. We've been lagging behind, and then we are trying to play catch up. So that's a good question. Who is AI actually going to be affecting well, it's right here already and in the future. So this time I'm going to introduce our next panelist, who is Miss Sherilyn Mason, who is no stranger to us at X-Teachers, as she's been on panels here before. Miss Sherilyn Mason is a seasoned higher education leader whose career has centered on expanding access, advancing equity, and strengthening student access. She currently serves as director of the Percy E. Sutton SEEK program at MacIver College of the City University of New York, where she leads holistic data-informed initiatives designed to improve retention and graduation outcomes for low-income, first-generation, and historically underserved students. Her leadership integrates academic support with career readiness, wellness, intentional engagement, and strength-based development. She has spearheaded the launch of a peer mentorship program, a learning skill workshop series, an entrepreneurship academy, a student showcase, and a comprehensive career-focused initiative, while also championing efforts to bridge the digital divide and expand undergraduate research opportunities. She remains actively engaged in institutional leadership, focused on enrollment management, assessment, and accreditation processes, including Middle States review. Beyond the campus, Sherilyn is a chairperson of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Diaspora Committee of New York, Inc., having previously served in several capacities, including Leadership Development Workshop Coordinator. She is the coordinator of SVG DRIP, a multi-regional Vincentian diasporic platform focused on disaster relief and community development. Her advocacy spans community empowerment, capacity building, and gender equity. Her commitment to community development began long before she migrated to the United States in 1999. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, she served as Vice President of the National Youth Council, represented her country at the Commonwealth Youth Forum in Scotland, the International Olympic Academy's International Session for Youth Olympic Ambassadors in Greece, and was active in sports and culture, including national netball representation and performing arts. She is currently a doctoral candidate at St. John's University, who holds degrees from CUNY Baccalaureate Program and Hunter College, and was a Thurgood Marshall Pathways Fellow with certification in strength-based education. She is a proud mother of 2 daughters and a frequent presenter and speaker on students' success, leadership, and community empowerment. I present to you Ms. Sherilyn Mason, our second presenter.
Thank you very much for having me. As you said, this is not my first time with Ex-Teachers Association and the Black History Month discussion. So I'm really excited to be here, especially because this topic of artificial intelligence is really a buzz in our communities now. And though I'm not a scientist or an expert in AI, I think I do have some opinions and thoughts about how we are evolving as a society. And so, because this is Black History Month and we're talking about leveling the playing field, I want to lift up the name of a few Black scientists, all of whom are Black women, who have or are contributing to this AI revolution we are experiencing. The first is Dr. Gladys West, who is a pioneer and mathematician and hidden figure who passed away just last month on the 17th of January at the age of 95. She left behind a profound legacy as a result of her critical work in developing the mathematical modeling that enabled modern GPS technology. The second person I'd like to lift up is Dr. Dorothy Vaughan, a NASA mathematician and programmer who pioneered early computer programming and algebraic methods of calculating machines, setting the stage for algorithmic problem solving. And finally, Dr. Timnit Gebru, a computer scientist and leader in AI ethics who focuses on algorithmic bias and data mining. My apologies. She co-founded Black in AI and distributed Artificial Intelligence Research Institute to push for a more ethical, equitable, and diverse AI, challenging the lack of representation in the field. And I think it is important for me to acknowledge those women, and especially to center Black women, because oftentimes women, especially Black ones, are left out of conversations regarding STEM or science, technology, engineering, and math. So as we discuss the topic tonight, I'd like for us to keep in mind those whose talent and whose capital usually matters, so that when we talk about leveling the playing field, we remember the diversity of people who are usually not even considered to be playing in the game, let alone to be on the playing field. So as millions of people get caught up in this new popular AI tool like ChatGPT, policymakers are playing catch up on public policy decisions about artificial intelligence, while corporations are miles ahead of us deploying it. And that should concern all of us, because we are actually playing catch up to millionaires who are imagining a world order governed by technocracy and not a democracy. So right now, systems developed by companies like OpenAI are already embedded in how we write, how we diagnose problems, how we police, and how we vote. So this is not something that is a next couple of years issue. This is a now issue. And so while the rules that are governing this transformation are really very fragmented and reactive at this point, and in some cases non-existent, the technology has gone so far ahead of us. And so this is not even just a technology story. It really is about power and who controls that power. So, AI is really reshaping labor markets and redefining things like intellectual property and concentrating infrastructure in the hands of a few people and corporations. So AI may be accelerating productivity, but it is also destabilizing things like the marketplace. It may be creating opportunities, but at the same time, it is replicating bias. Again, who creates it, right? And it's doing so at an unprecedented rate and scale. And AI, as much as it has power in terms of what it is able to do today, we also have to ask at what cost, especially in terms of the environment and what it takes to power AI. So when we ask, does AI level the playing field, we need to be, precise and ask level for whom, level under what governance structures, and level with whose data, whose labor, and whose accountability. And if we allow innovation to outpace the legal and ethical guardrails, we really risk looking at structural inequalities that will exponentially be harder to unwind as we move forward in our world. So I want to rest there for now, and I'm sure, as the discussion evolves, I'll have opportunities to probably expand some more on these thoughts.
Yes, you surely will have. And thank you for that presentation. And it has a lot of food for thought. And I'm sure that the audience are taking notes and that they will have their questions as well. And without further ado, our last but not least, we have, I hope I pronounce his name correctly, Dr. Fadilika Wiza. He's going to do his presentation. So I'm going to do his brief bio on him now. So, okay. Get it open. Okay, Doctor, did I pronounce your name correctly?
Fadilika Atiba Wiza.
Okay. Fadilika Atiba Wiza. That's the name?
You can just call me Atiba. My mother called me Atiba.
All right, thank you. Send these things so late. Okay. Atiba Weiser recently retired as the executive director of the National Alliance of Black School Education, NABSE. He is an educator with more than 40 years of experience, having previously worked as a classroom teacher, building administrator, district administrator, and university faculty member. At NABSE, he provides administrative leadership as the Chief Executive Officer and National Spokesperson of the organization. A former school ex-superintendent, Mr. Atiba Weiser, has been involved in many educational reform and school improvement projects. Additionally, he has served on the board of the National Alliance of Black School Educator, NABSE, the New York State Council of School Superintendents, NYSCOSS, the New York State Association of Supervision and Curriculum Development, ASCD, among others. Mr. Atiba Weiser is a social activist with involvement in many African American, and Caribbean organizations. He received his Bachelor of Arts degree in psychology from the City College of the City University of New York, a master's degree in education guidance and counseling from the Brooklyn College of the City University of New York, a master's degree in educational administration and supervision from the City College of the City University of New York, a college and his Doctor of Education degree from the Sage College of Albany, a master's degree in organizational leadership from Columbia University's Teachers College. He is a member of many professional and civic organizations, including life membership in the National Alliance of Black School Educators and the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, along with membership in the American Association of School Administrators, the American Educational Research Association, the Caribbean Studies Association, and the Sigma Pi Phi Professional Fraternity. An avid gardener, jazz enthusiast, and golfer, Mr. Atiba Weiser resides in the New York Capital District. I present to you Dr. Atiba Weiser.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for that introduction. And more importantly, thank you very much for having invited me to participate with you on this African American History Month as we look at the 100th anniversary of what Carter G. Woodson started out as African American History Week. Does AI level the playing field? Maybe yes, maybe no. The term artificial intelligence, however, sounds like an oxymoron. Seems to me that there is either intelligence or the absence of it. Perhaps the quality of intelligence can be questioned. What do we mean by genuine or real intelligence versus artificial intelligence? For decades, anthropologists, experimental psychologists, and other scientists have pondered and sorted ways of identifying intelligence in sources other than human beings. We all know of the work and experiments which are conducted on chimpanzees, rats, and other animals in the laboratories, in addition to those conducted in field studies. If the phenomenon is present, then is it artificial because it is not human? Who says that anything other than human is artificial? We often associate the term artificial with something. Perhaps we should refer to this phenomenon as machine intelligence instead of artificial intelligence. Unfortunately, however, the powers who control this area of study think otherwise. They have already termed machine intelligence or machine learning as a category or a subset of artificial intelligence. So, go figure. Irrespective of what we call it, does the phenomenon of non-human computational processes level the playing field? A similar question was posed in 1861 by a 43-year-old German philosopher. Obviously, it was not about AI, but the principle was similar. In the factories of Europe, the means of production became more automated and efficient, thus resulting in routine and sometimes complex tasks being completed more efficiently and, more importantly, less expensively. The colonies were also affected by the development of technology. The means of production were being automated. Machines were less expensive and more efficient than enslaved workers. Even so, the field was not leveled. The owners of the factories' benefits, profit grew. The workers were still disenfranchised. They had more free time, but they were not compensated commensurately. Since the 1800s, US companies have implemented profit-sharing programs. No worker received shares that were equal to the shares of the owners of the major stockholders. The same applies today. Any benefits that are derived by poor folks are incidental. Some argue that AI and other technologies enable the common person to perform tasks that will otherwise be beyond their reach. Thus, assuming erroneously, I may say, that the playing field is being leveled. Unfortunately, as the worker catches up with technology, the ruling class not only moves forward with better technology, but the gap between the haves and the have-nots widens. A casual look at the impact of AI suggests that the workers and poor individuals with computers and internet connections can perform tasks that they were not able to previously perform. It does not mean, however, that they're catching up. Anecdotal evidence and research tell us that for every unit of progress that the individual worker makes, the large corporations make a minimum of 100 times that progress. In the 1970s, the computer science student at the City College of New York spent hours on mainframe computers, only to learn that there were errors for which he or she had to stand in a long line, wait his or her turn to access the mainframe computer at what is now the Grove Center of Engineering, named in honor of Andrew Grove, the second and perhaps the most consequential chief executive officer of Intel. And most of us know Intel for a long time was the largest chip maker, and whatever Intel says determine where computer technology went. Andrew Grove was a graduate of CCNY, thus the Andrew Grove Center. Andrew Grove had a colleague, and he was his predecessor as CEO at Intel. His name was Arthur Moore. Arthur Moore famously stated that, quote, "The number of transistors on a microchip doubles approximately every 2 years, driving exponential growth in computing power." As prescient as Moore's law was, his term was limited. His term was time limited. As computers became more powerful, they allowed us to build systems that vastly outpaced anything that he could have imagined. Today, there is more computing power in cell phones or tablets than there were in the mainframe computers of the 1970s, on which Andrew Grove and Arthur Moore worked. Except for science fiction movies, the technology that existed in 1965 did not allow individuals to envision what is present today. And of course, what science fiction was then is passé today. These technologies are way out of the reach of the common man. Thus, any notion of leveling the playing field is unrealistic. Gone are the days of the teenager in his or her parents' basement or garage who invents technology that change the world. Most new developments in technology are occurring in the labs of large monopoly corporations. Think Meta, Microsoft, Tesla, etc. The kid in the garage with a six-pack of beer is no more. As our technology improves, those of the big boys and girls get bigger and better. The smaller developer entrepreneur is either absorbed by the large corporations or have their work stolen or is run out of business. So, Madam Moderator, please excuse my long-winded way of saying no. AI does not level the playing field. And I will end here and take your questions later. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Atiba-Wisa. And I agree with your opinion. And some people maybe have a different viewpoint. But the bottom line is, for me, when we talk about we are lagging behind or someone is actually stealing what people produce. Also, we talk about like even the corporations that are lagging behind. But my question, are we really training humans fast enough to match the speed of AI? That's a question that, are we already falling behind? I don't know which of the panelists would like to jump in on that.
Who's the we of whom you speak?
Huh?
Black people? Who's the we? Black people or just society at large?
Society, or even you could focus on the Black community, seeing that it's Black. So are we as Black people, are we being trained fast enough to match the speed of AI? Or are we already falling behind?
I think if you an acceptable space.
So who wanna answer? Who wanna?
I can, give it a stab.
Okay.
Am I being heard?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, you're being heard. Thank you.
Yes. It seems to me that if we go back to that fundamental proposition that the playing field is already unlevel, it is not an equal playing field. So we are asking AI to alter a reality that currently exists that had nothing to do with AI. The existence of an unlevel playing field really has much more to do with the economic and social, political and moral kinds of problems which have infected societies here in the US and across the globe for a very, very long time. And at the heart of it, of course, it lies the economic system, where some people accumulate quite a lot, others get not that much, and so on. And so if that is the specific circumstance that we currently face, okay, it means that AI as a set of technological capabilities, new capabilities, which we are using to across any range, any domains of our lives. Those technologies are essentially, I would say, private property. They are protected, they are owned by individual companies who generate and expect to generate enormous amount of money with those technologies and so on. And so they have no interest in leveling the playing field, because that would mean having to share their technologies with others who, I think, Cheryl mentioned earlier the digital divide that exists. So the digital divide, it preceded AI. Other kinds of divides, economic divide, racial divide, political, these divides preceded AI. So what AI, and if those who are in charge, or if those who control, if those who monopolize the creation of these new technologies and the exploitation of these new technologies already have positions of power within the society, economic, political, etc., then what one can assume is that they would want to use these technologies to cement the position that they currently occupy. So in that sense, it is not that, AI is leaving us behind and pushing some forward. It is that those who control the technology, that they have no interest in sharing the fruits of that technology, because their intentionality is to benefit themselves. Okay, and if in the process the broader society benefits and so on, then that might happen too. But this idea that they will, that we're going to have some democratization of the ownership of these capabilities, so that we can all move ahead at the same pace, singing the same song, kumbaya and so on, that is really not going to happen, because as of at this very moment, those technologies are already privatized. And so that very fact means that this notion of leveling the playing field cannot happen. You cannot have a level playing field in technologies when the technology is 95% monopolized by maybe 1.001% of the population. I mean, Sharon makes a wonderful point about the African American woman or Black woman and the Black scientists who can do enormous and inventive work in these technological fields as well. But the broad ownership of the technologies and the people to whom those benefits flow through ownership, because they have patents, they have intellectual property rights, they have all of these things, they have legal system designed to protect them. Okay, and so in that sense, it is not that AI would leave us behind. Okay, is that we have already been left behind some, a great number of people in this society by the monopolization of technologies, that generate tremendous profit by a very, very few people. And in that sense, AI would be no different.
If I can jump in, Venda.
All right.
I think in a very practical sense, in terms of how people are being left behind, and I work in higher education, and there is a whole big debate now about, whether or not higher education has any public good. And I think in terms of the messaging that happens sometimes in our communities, in terms of the value of higher education, a lot of our young people are being told, you could go and do a 3-month course, some little certification that will get you some job. And what is happening is that the very people who are messaging that to our communities are sending their kids to college to specialize in certain majors that will continue to allow them to dominate the field, that will continue to enshrine power within that particular class, that dominant class. And so I think we have to be very mindful of the messages that we're getting and who is giving us those messages, because at the end of the day, the jobs that we are being tracked into, our young people are being told, this, you can make some quick money here, are jobs that are going to be, with this expansion of AI, are going to be automated pretty quickly. And those young people are going to be left out of the economic playing field, while the children of the rich will be controlling the systems that govern our societies. So yes, the gulf is getting wider, and I think we have to be much more conscientious in terms of really thinking through how societies are positioned, the hierarchies in society, and who controls power, because at the end of the day, it really is about power. And so, as a community, I think there's a lot of work for us to do, getting out of this space of the immediacy of, now, what can I do now, or what can I gain quickly, as opposed to thinking about what are those systems and structures in place that are really continuing to keep us at the back of the bus, and actually probably taking us back to the slave plantation, for the want of a better terminology. So we have to really be mindful of who is messaging, what they're messaging, and at the end of that messaging, who is the beneficiary of what is being messaged.
May I, if Madam Moderator?
Can you get a raise a hand? You can raise your hand if you want to speak.
I think my hand is raised.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Dr.
yeah,
Weaver.
if I may follow up on Charlene comments there anecdotally. In 1995, I was on Long Island conducting some work. And there was a regional school that covered a regional program that covered 17 school districts in Suffolk County. And they were supposed to provide high-tech education to youngsters. The boys or the black male were doing masonry, carpentry, auto mechanic, nothing wrong with those things. The black young ladies were doing nail salon, cosmetology. The white young ladies were doing phlebotomy, computer science. The white men were doing avionics, medical technology. And we had a meeting. And of course, I was the only black person in the room and the only person who saw a problem with that. So when Charlene talked about power and guidance for these students, these systems are designed to not close the gap, but broaden the gulf. So that by the time we're done, the playing field that is supposed to be level is even disproportionately exacerbated. So as we speak of Black History Month, I think one of the things we also need to do, along with what Charlene and Gary said, is really not just pay tribute to it, look at the work of these Black engineers, scientists, and what they've done. Because too often, our youngsters don't have the role models whom they need to see, who can tell them, yes, you can do that. I love the guys who play basketball, football, baseball, golf, and all that. But there's a whole lot more than that we can do. You go to the, I don't know how many folks visit the HBCUs. There are HBCUs tours every year. And you go down there and you see some of the conditions under which these sisters and brothers have to try to get educated. It's all not just Spelman, Morehouse, and Howard University. You go down to Alabama, where you wonder how they're able to grant degrees. Some of us have technologies in our homes that are more powerful than some of these institutions have. So the playing field is not being leveled. The gap is actually widening because those who have the capacity to do more, and those who don't have are barely playing catch up.
Yep. Yes, it could be like a global disparity happening. It's like it can happen globally, even without us, if we don't have the skill set, teach our children the skill set when it comes to AI, then those persons, as Sherilyn say, the parents who are sending off their children to universities, while those parents who are just focusing on these little short courses that will just wear off at a little time, those are the ones who are going to not benefit. While those who have gone to higher education, they are the ones who are going to be profitable and gain more from this new phenomenon of AI. I recognize Dr. Nicolette Springhand.
Oh, good evening again. I'm just curious to know, what the panelists think about the users of AI. For example, teachers, students, people in the business community who are using AI now for like predicting trends and stuff like that. Do you think that at some point the playing field would be leveled?
No. See, one of the things that we need to remind, I'm sorry, Gary, go ahead. Okay, one of the things we need to remind you of is as we make one step forward, other folks make 10 steps forward. Take automobile. When I came to this country, a Black man owning a Benz was a big deal. The Cadillac Biarritz was the car to get. You talk to well-to-do Black folks, they all wanted a Cadillac. Now those folks don't drive Cadillacs. When we were able to buy Benz, they bought Rolls Royces or Bugatti, or they get private yachts or private planes. So it is not to suggest that though the disenfranchised or the previously disenfranchised aren't moving, it is just that we're not catching up because the gulf just gets larger. In terms of what AI is being used for, it's being used for any number of things. And I welcome the folks using AI. I taught a college course where I give an assignment to tell students, each group of 5 will create a school district. A superintendent, a chief academic officer, chief technology officer, chief human resources officer. Some folks got AI to create it. And then they were so careless, they couldn't even cheat properly. They didn't even they just downloaded it and submitted it. I wonder, how did you figure it out? So those are the kind of things we need to be also focusing, not just using technology, but using technology effectively, and also being careful about, one of the questions has to do with attribution and so forth, because it's like, for those of you who grew up around my time, we used to have a phrase, little fools don't play with edge tools. So if you're not careful, you can get yourself in trouble.
I want to read for you something, because it's an amazing article, and it raises some questions that we have to consider. One of the potential consequences of AI is not simply maintaining and expanding inequities between, say, Black people and white people in a country like the United States, but in fact, creating massive inequities among all peoples across the world, and so that white people, blue people, brown people, all kinds of people could be absolutely threatened by what AI potentially augurs for the future. And this is an article in the Guardian newspaper, and it is entitled, "If AI makes human labor obsolete, who decides who get to eat?" Nice, simple question. Who decides who get to eat? So I decided I need to read this. And it reads like this. How will we be fed? That's the biggest question not seriously being addressed That's the biggest question not being seriously addressed amid all this talk about whether or not artificial intelligence will end up taking over all of our jobs. Formidable though the technology appears, similar fears have popped up repeatedly since the Industrial Revolution, and most working-age adults remain employed. Still, what is sorely missing is a serious debate about what to do if this future in fact materializes. For OpenAI's Sam Altman, he says the future can be vastly better than the present because AI will make us stinking rich. But that seems like a risky assumption for almost everyone except Altman and his fellow techno oligarchs. Even if AI generates enormous economic prosperity, its distribution will remain a political challenge. This juncture calls for a serious open debate about how the fruits of this prosperity will be apportioned among humanity. Addressing the question as 2 parts. The first is about how to design a technically efficacious system to redistribute the fruits of the economy as machines take over, and labor share of incomes drops eventually near zero. The more important question, though, is this: how does this economic reorganization, how will it restructure power? Who will decide what to tax once AI destroys labor income, which provides the main source of government revenue in most advanced countries? Who decides how much everyday people who do not have an equity stake in the AI revolution get to consume? How will society be organized in a world in which machines generate most or all of the economic benefits and all of the economic output, and a few dozen techno-billionaires get to decide what share of the world's resources, money, energy, minerals should be allocated to further expand superhuman intelligence? Who gets to decide who eats? That affects everyone.
And if I could just illustrate, in terms of what Dr. Denny just talked about, sometimes we ask whether art imitates life or if life imitates art. And I think for me, one of my precautionary tales as it relates to artificial intelligence came a few years ago when my daughter had a book series, The Hunger Games. And I eventually read some of it after looking at the movie that came out. And really the society was organized in a way where people literally lived in a surveillance society that was controlled by the folks who control the technology. And they determined who ate, when they ate, and at whose expense, right? So they would fight for the food that they would eat, and depending on which district you lived in, and if you had the stronger warriors, then you potentially got access to some parts of the society. And so I think, as we think about these technologies, we really have to understand that people are actually making decisions as to how much of the technology you have access to. Because when you think of, some of the most popular technologies right now, if you are not able to pay for the technologies, you get the very basic access to the technology. And then if you have some more resources, you are able to get more and more of it. But then it's also very segmented. So you might get access to doing technology that allows you to do some research, technology that allows you to do some artwork or something artistic, but you are paying for it, which means somebody at the end of that transaction is making profit off of what they are allowing you to have access to. And so, yes, people will be able to have more access, and those who have more resources will have more access to the access that is given to us. But at the end of the day, the people who own the technology are the ones who are owning and governing our societies. And we're at a stage now where we're actually playing catch up to the technology, because AI is not new. It is new in terms of our accessibility to it. It's been around for a long time. We've been interacting with it for a long time, but it's more accessible now. And so now it's more in people's consciousness and the front minds. So while we're thinking that we're catching up, people are generations ahead of us. And so, they have already done all the algorithms in terms of how much access they can give you without you catching up. And so I'm not sure that, save and accept there is some kind of a revolution that disrupts the system as it is right now, that we're going to be able to catch up anytime soon to the folks who actually own the major technologies.
Okay, Ms. Mason, as a teacher of higher education.
I'm an administrator, not a teacher. But go ahead.
Sorry. Were you a teacher before?
Legal alien?
Okay, as a past teacher, always a teacher. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. Because Dr. Spring asked about the users of AI. I'm thinking now towards the students. How is AI affecting our students? Are we, as students, do you think they are thinking, their higher level thinking is being affected, their critical thinking skills, are they shallow when in their writing because they're using a lot of focusing on the AI? How is it really affecting or benefiting the users?
So based on my experience, and I had this discussion with some students this week because I was preparing for this, I think that we have a lot of students who are becoming dependent on the tools and using the tools. And I'll give you a very practical example. I had a student that was sending me her schedule to do an internship with us. It literally was a 2-sentence kind of email that she needed to send to me to tell me the days that she would be available and the times that she would be available. And to my great surprise, when she sent the email, at the very top of it was, how do I word this professionally? I mean, literally, she sent me the prompt that she used with a 2-liner that says, I'll be available Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays between 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. And I was just blown away by the fact that, like, you literally had to put that into the tech, you know. And so I think there is, for some students, an over-reliance on it because it seems easy. And so why bother doing the thinking when something else could do the thinking for me? But I think that there are other students who are very wary of what the technology can potentially do for them. And they are actually pushing back and saying that they realize that the temptation to rely on this thing is going to affect their critical thinking skills. So I think there are some young people that are thinking critically. There's some young people that are pushing back. I know my own daughter, you know, she said to me recently, oh, mommy, you know, you're always talking about environmental stuff and so on and recycling, but this artificial intelligence that, you know, you and some of your colleagues and so on are using is doing much more damage to the environment in terms of the amount of electricity that it is requiring, of course, and, you know, probably fueled by fossil fuel type technology, energy, and the amount of water that is used to like cool the data centers where the technology is housed, you know. And so there are young people that are thinking about the consequences of this, and they are making conscious decisions not to use it as much and thinking of ways in terms of how they can preserve their own intellect as well. But again, we need them to go beyond those thought processes as well, to be thinking about how do we own and become owners of the technology. And so, for instance, you know, like one of the things that I have pushed in my program, you mentioned in my bio, an entrepreneurship academy, getting students to think about ownership, getting students to think of not using your education just to be able to work for somebody else and to get a job, but how do you start thinking about the problems in our societies and how do you address those things and so on, and becoming people that actually own and shape the world that we want to have. So I think, you know, it is an interesting place to be. And I think this is why conversations like these are important. And we need to make sure that we're including young people in these conversations as well, so that, you know, we're helping them to think through some of the challenges that the world is facing.
Thank you. I recognize Dr. Ambry's hand.
Thank you for the opportunity. And forgive me if I'm a little bit long-winded, because I have more questions than answers here. The first thing that I have here, and please don't try to answer it, is what comes after AI? The next thing that I have to mention, those of us who lived through COVID realized that there was a situation where most everybody could not work. How did the government survive? By giving poor people money to spend. Why does that make sense? Or why did it make sense? We are concerned about a system where the economy, which I'm sure most of us in here cannot understand what economy is, although we contribute to the economy. I don't understand it because it's an abstract noun. And the economy is one thing, but those of us who support the economy are called consumers. So we consume. The question is, going back to the old song that I really liked, nobody sings it anymore. What am I living for? Short term and long term. Again, we are looking at this question: does AI level the playing field? Well, does AI lower the working field? Because most of us, when we grow, we work so that as we get older, we can play. And AI is basically replacing the work, so we have more time to play. But then who controls what benefits come from AI? The common man, I am told, since before I can understand what the common man was, have common sense. And AI, to me, is the opposite of common sense. AI is technology. And what AI has not been able to do so far is to generate emotion. And emotion is really what makes us human. So I feel very, very anxious that oftentimes when we face the challenge, we do not recognize potentially how much power is in our hands, and we leave it up to somebody else who, like the great Tom Sawyer, gives us the impression that they got one on us. But really, we have one on them if we choose to work smart. I don't want to take up more time, but I'm not sure what the reaction is going to be to the nonsense that I've been saying.
Well, you know, I am a bit amused at at how you ended your comment, your reflection on your thoughts and so on. We all smarter and less smart than we think we are from at one time or another. It seems to me though that there are some basics that we should always remember. That AI is a tool. We should simply never forget that. It's a tool. The same way that a plane is a tool. The same way that a knife is a tool. The same way that a stone flint made 2 million years ago is the first tool. Okay. The same way the bow and arrow is a tool. And if we understand that human beings make tools, the same way the computer is a tool, our Zoom capabilities, these are tools. All of these are tools. What distinguishes AI from other tools is its capacity to act at the level of speed, and as the definition which our moderator gave us, take over in some instances decision making normally vested in human beings. And so human beings created that tool. AI did not create itself. It's a technology produced by human beings for the benefit of those who have produced these tools. And for example, as I began simply with laying out how you can fly from New York to St. Vincent sometime in the future very easily without necessarily having to face a human being. But you will get to St. Vincent and get back and so on, because these are tools made by human beings. Okay, and so what we have to do, since humanity is inventive, okay, and every single one of us alive today, who at some point, every one of us alive today, at some point, we're gonna die. Okay, and hopefully we'll be replaced by our children and our great-grandchildren and our great-great-great-grandchildren in the same way we replace our ancestors who were before us. Okay, and all of us are building upon the knowledge, upon the capabilities, upon presumably the moral systems and value systems which predated us and perhaps changed them and so on. And so in that sense, we cannot know what the future holds technologically. So to the first question, what happens after AI? If you are living 1,000 years old, you do not see the motor car. It's impossible because the technology, you cannot clearly see men landing on the moon. And these technologies are unimaginable. We can't even cross the Atlantic 1,000 years ago. Ocean-bearing ships do not exist. So presumably 1,000 years from now, 2,000 years from now, there would be technologies where this AI revolution that we currently inhabit would probably be seen like child's play. So understanding how the future unfolds is not something that we can have any genuine confidence in, because we simply live for 100 years if we are very, very lucky. Okay, and beyond that, we take our part in that parade of human beings who have been before us, who then leave that and let the other our children and grandchildren decide the way forward. What we can do and what we have to do is manage the moment we are in. Okay, and in managing this moment, and this is why the question is actually the question is a far more perceptive question than one might have originally assumed. The idea as to whether AI levels the playing field, because it implicates the nature of our existence today, that we live in on an equal world. What will AI do to the world of inequality? Will it erase it, or will it make it worse? In that sense, it's a fundamental question. And AI would possess capabilities which would make our lives better at some point. Major medical innovations we can see taking place, which would eliminate cancers, do all kinds of stuff which benefit the vast majority of human beings. But at the same time, there's an article today on the Hill newspaper where there's a major fight that has erupted between the Trump administration and one of the AI companies, because the Trump administration want to have access to the technology, the surveillance capabilities that the technology offers, and the war-making technology capabilities that the technology offers, and the makers do not want to give the Trump government access to that technology. And Trump has now ordered the federal government to eliminate all elements of this company's architecture, technological architecture within the government, unless they bow to what the government is requesting. So not only do you can have fights between companies seeking dominance, or fights with companies seeking to control the vast majority of people. Governments themselves can have fight with companies, and governments can be fighting other governments over control of these technologies, and so on. So that's why, when it had been said earlier that it's a complicated and complex and perplexing set of questions, that is true, because it's not simply black versus white. There are many different players with different kinds of motivations, different concerns. And in this particular instance, on the Hill newspaper right now, We have this fight that has broken out between the US government and one of the major AI companies over the US government's, the military's insistence that it must have access to the mass surveillance technologies and the capacity to wage war in ways that is just utterly destructive to human life, and so on. And the companies saying, well, we don't want to use our technology in that way, but others will. And so, so in that sense, it would seem to me that we keep our eyes focused on two things, that at the end of the day, it's a tool. Okay, we never forget that. And secondly, then what arises from that, that recognition, how do we use this tool? Who control these tools? And those are conversations which must be had.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Cordelia Telfer's hand was up for a while, so I'll entertain her now.
Hello, it's Cordell in Toronto. I wanted to touch on two things. First, in terms of where we're heading, that AI may eliminate many of the traditional jobs that we know. And so when that is no longer the primary source of someone's income, already here in Canada, I've attended a seminar where they've been discussing the need for universal basic income. So that will no longer be a social policy, but it would become an economic necessity. And I think it was Dr. Ambrose who mentioned during the COVID lockdown, where in the US, stimulus checks were sent out to families. And here in Canada, we received CERB to keep the economy going. So that was just a precursor to show that we might be heading there much sooner than later for universal basic income for families. The thing I wanted to touch on is what have been discussed, AI as a tool. It's definitely a tool, and it could help in leveling the playing field with, I see it used in terms of mathematics, complex math. In schools, you may have a teacher who doesn't explain the concepts properly, and a student who is trained on using AI can use AI to supplement the teaching and help bring them up to speed. And where, again, Miss Mason mentioned that student who sent the prompt for something very simple. If that student was well trained on using AI or better trained at school, they wouldn't even need an AI prompt to assist them in writing a simple sentence. So it must be taught properly, and it can be very beneficial to students. Thanks.
Thank you for your contribution. You're going to respond, Dr. Luther?
Yeah. Go back to Herman's earlier comment in terms of play. The 41-year-old philosopher whom I quoted was Karl Marx, and Marx talked about leisure time, and that as profits accumulate, the bourgeoisie ought to be able to allow the workers more leisure time. For some of you who might be around my age, if you're in St. Vincent, Wednesdays used to be a half day, except if you work in the bank, at the hospital, and so forth. Then you had Sunday off, and then they added Saturday, they eliminated Wednesday, catching up and trying to make it universal, or so forth. But I'm raising this because of what Gary said earlier in terms of all this accumulation. When, and he mentioned a term of time, when the companies generate or use technology to automate and to become more efficient, they produce more, they make more money. The workers have less time to work because they've been displaced by technology. But what do they do at that time? Do they play, as Herman said, or do they go to school to become better at what they do? Are they compensated for the lost time because now machine has replaced them? And none of the above happened. But it can happen in a different society where things are more equalized and level. So my concern in terms of some of what I hear here is not the technology, but how people use the technology. Technology in itself is, it's just a flat piece of thing. It doesn't have a mind of its own. You can program in certain things into it to get it to react, as we see in some of those science movies. I mean, I don't know, some of you might remember there used to be a show on TV called Knight Rider, where this car would fly through bullets and jump over walls and all that stuff, and the car would get its feelings hurt. But we know that was fiction. But now science reality is outpacing what used to be science fiction years ago. And the question again, we can't turn it back. And I think that's what Dr. Denny was looking at earlier, is how we adapt, how we receive it, how we integrate it in what we do. Because AI is here. That's just a matter of fact, and it's not going anywhere. It might be replaced by something that we don't call AI, and we may not be around when that happens. But while we're here, I think the onus is on us to make sure that we use it effectively, we use it responsibly, so that we get out of it what we want to get out of it, but more importantly, we don't hurt those people who might not be in a position to do as we currently do.
Yes, Dr. Visa, I like that's where you said technology is here, but it's how we use it, because some people use AI for different things, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But there are two questions in the chat. One is from Dr. Spring. While it is established that the developers and owners of AI are benefiting, is AI allowing us, the users, to work smarter today? You want me to repeat the question? While it is established that the developers and owners of AI are benefiting, is AI allowing us, the users, to work smarter today?
Yes,
I think
if
that
we
was
choose
kind
to.
of addressed before a little bit.
The answer is yes, if we choose to. It's there. It is for us to take advantage of it. AI doesn't tell us to use it. We have to tell AI what we want to use it to do and do it. Some of us have more computing power in our homes than school labs had 20 years ago. It's getting easier to use, cheaper. The cost of a good computer today is less than what I paid for a Commodore 64 in 1985, and you can get a lot more out of it. So those things are not the issue. The issue is, how are we going to do with what we have now? And as Dr. Denny says, we look towards the future. What is the future going to look like? And what role are we going to play in that process? The technology by itself is just there. I mean, we used to use a hoe and a rake back home, and I talk about one that you lift up and you slam it down. People don't use that no more. They press a button and everything goes. So.
Ms. Vanda Mercury has. Mr.
Yes, but these questions were here before he put his hand up.
Okay.
So I'm going to address this question first. And I saw his hand, sorry. Natasha Burke, her question is, what are your thoughts on AI's use in informational warfare and social manipulation? What are your thoughts on AI's use in informational warfare and social manipulation?
Well, that's such an interesting question. And I think we're seeing more and more of it in terms of people using the technology to manipulate political campaigns and messaging, because certainly you can get messaging out to millions of people much faster than you could in the past. So definitely in the hands, again, it being a tool in the hands of those who have ill intent or who have the intention to manipulate certain systems or certain processes, they will use the technology for that purpose. Similarly, you have situations now where you cannot necessarily, unless you are doing additional research, determine whether or not something is real or not, because the technology, this deep fake technology can replicate people's voices. Somebody on this very Zoom could be capturing our voices, and we find ourselves in another session somewhere else presenting on something that we weren't even physically there at, but they have the representation of us and the capability to do that. And so it is a very real thing that is happening right now that we have to really guard against. And that's why I talked about earlier about the guardrails that we put up, and we're actually now playing catch up in terms of how people are using this in some people in very unethical ways. How do we determine what are the penalties? How do we determine what is intellectual property? So, one of the concerns right now is who really owns some of the AI stuff? Because if it is building off of data or models that exist, who really owns it? The person that had the original piece of thought or artwork or whatever, or the person that's creating this new thing? And so we really have a lot of work to do in terms of how we regulate the usage of AI and how we really police it, because it can get to a place where we are living in a dystopian future. And that dystopian future could be really soon, because again, in the hands of people whose intentions are not good, they can do a lot of bad with the tool.
I want to answer that question too. And when I heard the question, there's a woman, an African-American woman. Her name is Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett. And Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett was the woman who created the vaccine, the mRNA vaccine that has saved millions and millions of lives. Okay. And as a historian, I have taught classes on the history of medicine, race, disease, and medicine in Africa and the diaspora. I've studied the history of slavery and how the demographic consequences of enslavement, both in Africa and the Caribbean, all kinds of stuff. Okay, and so I realized through that experience as a professor of history that that this woman, Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett, this Black woman, okay, who there were two mRNA vaccines. One was by Pfizer and the other was Moderna. Okay, that in another time and place, and presumably sometime in the future, this woman would be hailed as one of the greatest medical doctors ever. Okay, but the praise that white men who did what she did received in the past, and that she is not getting even now, that is a consequence of the information war that took place during COVID, when all kinds of videos will spring up on your WhatsApp, on your Facebook, on your Instagram, all kinds of nonsense, all kinds of stuff that had nothing to do with the fundamental work that this extraordinary Black woman produced, and which ultimately she was vilified by millions who actually benefited from her work. Okay, but in the context that emerged in this, particularly in this country, where it became a political struggle, Republican versus Democrat, rural counties versus urban counties, and so on, and where anti-vaxxers versus pro-vaxxers, all of these kinds of tumult, noise, confusion appearing in your inboxes through this information war, and in the process, a genius of a Black woman whose invention saved tens of millions of lives all over the world. Only in few places is she receiving the praise and adulation that white men received in the past for doing what she did. That is one of the consequences of that kind of, what the question asks about how AI technology or information technology, these wars, how they can corrupt and pollute and besmirch the good work and good names. Dr. Kizmia Corbett, absolutely brilliant Black woman who saved millions of lives. Globally, not enough people is bobbing at the feet precisely because of the information wars that took place during COVID.
Thank you. Brother John, you can make a summary. You can ask questions or give your comments now. I'm not hearing you. We're not hearing. Are you?
John, you're muted.
John.
You're muted.
Unmute yourself, John.
Unmute yourself. You're not hearing us.
He's working on it.
Can you mute him?
I don't think so.
Maybe the host needs to unmute him.
That's what I'm asking her, if she can do that.
I can't. I'm asking him to unmute.
Oh, okay.
I
Probably not hearing.
Perhaps we move on until he's ready.
Okay. We have another question in the chat by Jeff Edwards. Are the owners of AI technology going to spend billions of dollars developing it and then give it away and pay us for our not working, our leisure time? For our not working, our leisure time.
Before he jumps in, I'm back. Yeah?
Oh, okay.
But after he's finished, of course.
Who? No, I was at, there's a question in the chat, so you can go ahead.
Okay.
It was just a question in the chat I was asking.
All right. Some time ago, a friend of mine asked me what AI meant to me. And I said artificial intelligence, and he excoriated me. He laughed me to scorn. And when I asked him what it meant, he said abominable interference. And he said it was devil work and a whole number of things and so on. So I left that alone because I figured that that's something for another discussion. But when people start thinking of things like that, it tells you something. Now, years ago, a college professor had us sit in class and write down 0.01 100 times. And we came up with 1. And he went to the computer, did the same thing, and did not get 1. And the reason why he said the computer could not give you 1 is because the computer works at binary. And it actually isn't able to deal with decimals and fractions to the point that humans can. And so what it does is that it truncates it. So you don't get 100 from it, or you don't get 1 from it if you do that. Now, I say this to say that AI is not foolproof. AI is computer driven. And because AI is computer driven, we are in a situation where the question is, will AI level the playing field? And what are the implications for humanity? I want to address the leveling of the playing field. And I say, as all of the other, the panelists have added, AI will never level the playing field, because you see what it does is that it creates 2 sets of people. Those who control the technology, who understand the technology, and those who are struggling to understand what the technology is.
John, allow me to interrupt you.
When they introduced the computer in my company.
John, allow me to interrupt you.
Okay.
So that move back a little bit so that the application is on the screen. Backward as opposed to forward. Great. Thank you.
Okay. I thought you said forward ever, backward never. But that's another story. Yeah. Years ago, when the computer was introduced, some of my coworkers actually left because they said, you know, we were doing like accounting and we were using the 7-column pads. And they refused to do the computer. They preferred to take the long, route to work on figures as opposed to using the computer. And so many of them were laid off. Many of them left because they said, we do understand the stupidness that they're going on with. So here we are now with AI, which is computer driven. And because it is computer driven, it is going to be full of errors, because what you feed into AI, if you give it flawed data, it will give you flawed output, garbage in, garbage out. And so, as I was saying, it creates two classes of people: those who control and understand the technology, and those who don't. And because of that, we will never have a level playing field where AI is concerned. Thank you.
Anyone want to be back? Okay. The question that Jeff Edward asks is, are the owners of AI technology going to spend billions of dollars developing it and then give it away and pay us for our not working, our leisure time?
Nice to hear from Dr. Edwards. I did quote Karl Marx on that issue, and the answer is no. We don't expect for that to happen. But the argument that was being made, he was making an argument for socialism, and he said in a social society that will be the case, because once the work is done, people need time to recalibrate, refresh themselves, entertain themselves, etc. And since they're making all this money for the owners, then they ought to get some of it back. And please, I'm just answering the question and talking about what the research says, but I'm not making an advocacy for that at this in this venue. So John Edwards, the answer is no, we don't expect for that to happen. But it is something that has been raised. Thomas Kuhn in the Evolution of Scientific Revolution also speak about those things as society transforms itself, the gap widens, the income gap widens. We are proud to make 6 and 7 figures, some of us, but we're not catching up with the folks who made a whole lot more, and they're actually working less and making more, and we're working more and making less. So while this forum is not the place for it, one can make an argument that those wealthy people didn't just get wealthy because they're brighter than the rest of us, and they didn't get there because of some altruistic stuff. If you look at the names of the people who own these technology, Musk and Starlink and Tesla and all that stuff, where did they get their money from? These are folks from South Africa who benefited and then came here and benefited further and built their empires on the backbone of black folk. And I saw Elon Musk's father saying, "Oh, Elon is not racist. He played with the servants when he was a kid," and those kind of stupid statements to justify, their racism. So we have to be realistic. We don't expect that folks will give away their money, but we can't stop struggling for what we think is our right. And Dr. Denny talked about these black women. Ms. Mason spoke about it, who are overlooked. I mean, if you look at the movie on the 3 black women working at NASA, I mean, the woman who did the work wasn't even allowed in the room where her work was being discussed. Those are things that we have to fight, and where we are now is an outgrowth of all of those things. So it might not be achievable in our lifetime, but we can't stop struggling for those things that we deserve and for which our people work hard to build. I hope I answered your question, Dr. Edwards.
So I'm just going to answer that in a very provocative way, right? That no, they're not going to do that. And so if we look at some other things that are happening in the world today, when we look at things like population control, we have to then ask, are these relationships that are happening in tandem? So because it is predicted that there will be less need for humans, then we control the population size. And I'm just throwing that out, you know, not saying that it is, but I'm just being provocative by mentioning it.
Thank you, Dr. Tiba Weezer. I am very concerned that the people who control this and own this are also going to own us. All of our electricity and all of these other things that we need, services that we need, how are we going to pay for them? And if we can't pay for them, are we going to become serfs of these people? Thank you.
Okay. If you need to ask a question, you can use the heart-shaped icon at the lower bar of the screen and to raise your hand.
Thank you.
Or you can put your question in the chat.
Who's asking the question? Just curious.
No, I'm just letting them know. If
No, I was asking, someone just asked a question about.
That was Geoff Edwards.
Oh, that's Geoff. Hey, Geoff. Yeah. That's I don't think that is going to happen. I don't want to sound you know, thing, but when Martin Luther King said the arc points towards justice, that may or may not be, so that it might be aspirational, but I think there's some resiliency among us that will not allow for those things to happen. That is why I think Cheryl-Ann touched upon it earlier, the safeguards, the guardrails, and we have to be vigilant. I mean, the guy who, I made a down payment on a Tesla until I really read about this knucklehead and I took my money back. You know, two of my friends still have their Teslas. They like it. It's good technology, they say. But when you look at the people who do these things and who own these technologies, yes, they would love to do what you just said. I mean, look, let's go back to the automation of the automobile industry. When the assembly belts and so assembly lines were created and the robots came and started spraying cars and assembling cars, where a car could be assembled in less than a day, that used to take months and so forth. Again, it goes back to what Karl Marx said. You're taking away the people's work and you're using technology to maximize your profit. But then you want to fire these folks or pay them less. Well, you didn't just get there because you were brighter than the next person. You got there because you were in a position to exploit the resources, human resources, material resources that were there. And then once you think you no longer need it, the worker is displaced or discarded like used tissue. And the answer to that is no. We don't expect them to give away what they earn. And no one is asking for anyone to give away what they earn. What the worker is asking for is his fair share. Several companies started in 1887 in this country, started what we call profit sharing, where the worker got a share of the profit. At the end of the year, these folks are getting like a penny and a dollar. The billionaires were still making millions, and the workers who got profit share got chump change. You know, now it looked good on paper that the workers were sharing in the profit, but look at their actual income, where they signed that W-2 form. The income was so small that the profit that they got didn't really make a difference in the lifestyle. The gap between the worker and the owner kept getting bigger and bigger even with that. So we're not asking folks to give away what they have, but we have to fight and be vigilant to make sure that we preserve what is rightfully ours. And Musk didn't make his money because he was the brightest in the room. Zuckerberg didn't make his money because he was the brightest in the room. Gates, none of these guys made their money because of the brightest in the room. They made their money because they were the ones in the room who were positioned to do that because they had resources that the others didn't have.
So we could say that it's because of access and the skills and the strategies that these people bring to the table that cause these people to develop these kind of machines or vehicles that avenues that would make them, get them rich quick or wealthy? Is it that or something else? Because for me, I'm seeing like AI is not now like a tool, it is more like a economic building, where it build the economy or build the wealth of people or building people's wealth.
I mean, I think it's just another form of the ways in which the folks in society that control the means are using to continue to accumulate and amass wealth for themselves. And so I think, power never concedes power just like that, and so we have to begin, and I think Atiba spoke to it, to ask ourselves what power lies in our hands, So in terms of the dollars that we choose to spend, we have that choice. We have a control over, just the way Atiba decided that I'm not going to purchase a Tesla. We as consumers can determine what we consume. And I think money talks, and what they say walks. And so as we become more conscientious, as we become more intentional in terms of where we invest, and collectively, I think, we have more resources than we think that we actually have. And if we make those decisions about where we spend our dollars, then it makes people kind of realize that the transaction goes both ways. And so, the simple concept of demand and supply, if we're not demanding, then what are you supplying? And so I think we have to start making very conscious choices about where we invest, sometimes what we think are small resources, but collectively, the wealth is there. But if we mindlessly just use it, if I think of how potentially sometimes my children might use Uber Eats, right? Maybe they should be investing in technology that creates ways to get food, generate different scientific ways to engineer food, instead of just buying food, mindlessly. And so there are real choices that we make every day that will determine the way the society continue to evolve and who are going to be the beneficiaries. And so we have to begin to position ourselves in a way where we can buck the system, because systems are built to last, and these institutions are built to last. And so we have to begin to think about how do we dismantle those systems so that in terms of the redistribution of wealth, it goes more to the masses of people that usually are creating the wealth in the first place, and not for those who just, gain it while they're sleeping and we're working.
Okay, all good things must come to an end. A very fruitful and very educative discussion. And we appreciate all the persons who participated. We thank the panelists. And as we come into the end, I would ask each panelist if they can just have a closing, maybe a sentence or two as we wind up the debate. So I'll start with I'm going to go from the bottom up. This time I'm going to begin with Dr. Atiba.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I trust that we were able to say some things that made sense. At least I hope I made sense. I know Gary and Sherilyn did. And more importantly, I trust that the audience was able to benefit from this discussion, because I learned a lot, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time again.
Thank you. Sister Sherilyn, you are the rose among the thorns.
Oh, thank you. I just want to thank ex-teachers for always kind of being at the cutting edge of issues that we need to discuss in our communities. And so thank you for having me. I hope that this is going to, that we scratch the surface in terms of the discussion, and that there will certainly be more opportunities to continue the conversation, because it is the type of conversation that we need to really center as we think about the kinds of societies that we want to continue to create and for our children to inherit. So, thanks again for the opportunity, and hopefully the discussion landed well with the folks who are listening.
Welcome. Dr. Denny?
In this Black History Month, and we being Caribbean people, most of us, we should remember Dr. Eric Williams, that in 1944, he wrote a book called Capitalism and Slavery, where he was the one who underlined the importance of the creation of this new technology based upon enslaved labor. So in that sense, where we speak of these technologies generating enormous wealth, but which had as their foundation the exploitation of subordinate classes of one group or another, we should remember Eric Williams, who revolutionized our thinking in that regard. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak with such wonderful panelists and great moderator and tremendous questions.
Thank you. At this time, I'll call on our esteemed president, Mr. Farrell, Jackie Farrell, to give us the vote of thanks. You muted. He's muted.
Unmute yourself, Jackie.
Unmute. Jackie, unmute yourself. We're not hearing you. Jackie, I'm not hearing you. Can you mute it, unmute?
I can't. I can only ask him to unmute.
Oh, sorry about that.
You hear me?
We can hear you now.
Yes, I'm hearing you now.
Okay, then it's going to be very, very brief. I asked because my phone is about to die on me. That's why I've asked. I didn't clear anybody, so only person who's doing this knows. I've asked Dr. Nicolette Spring to do a very brief ceremony, a summary of the discussion, and then I'll do a very brief vote of thanks.
Okay, Dr. Spring, you're on the floor.
Yeah, I'm charged. Go for the chat.
I think based on the motto for the ex-teachers, together for growth, to learn and to teach, to help, I summarize that the panelist thinks that artificial intelligence is not leveling the playing field. In fact, it is widening the gap between the creators of artificial intelligence and the users of artificial intelligence as a tool. The moderator gave a general overview, and they started the discussion, and again, in line with the topic, does artificial intelligence level the playing field? In summary, again, it says, oh gosh, this has been happening since the early years, and we will never ever catch up to the creators. So we as Black people will always be behind unless we change our mindsets and we become the developers and creators and not just the users. That's my summary. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Spring. Back to Jackie. Jackie? You should have, you unmute yourself. You have to unmute yourself.
I just did, yes.
No, I'm hearing you.
Yes.
You hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, very quickly. Cheryl Ann Mason, who was a close associate of mine at Tiba Weezer. We go back to prep school. They had the moderator, Dr. Ambrose, chairperson of the Education Committee. All the listeners who are out there online, thank you very, very much. I just want to remind everyone that something major happened the other day, where the President of the United States put up effigies of Barack Obama and his wife on the screen, so to speak. And that day, everybody said, well, the stock market is going to go down. Stock market went up. Open your eyes and see. I know my eyes not open. Thank you very much for coming. Thanks for your involvement. Be it New York.
Brother President, I don't think I heard you mention Dr. Denny's name. Maybe I missed.
Yes, I called Dr. Denny first.
Oh, I didn't, sorry.
I said Professor Denny. That's why.
Oh, just making sure.
I given him his handle.
All
Okay.
right.
Yeah, whether it's New York, not New York, America, because there's some people might be listening. Canada, the Caribbean, including SVG. Thank you all for being with us tonight. And thanks again to Dr. Ambrose, Vendor for doing a superb job, John Murphy, and Dr. Ann, superbly assisted by Sister Mona, who is one of us. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great weekend.
And a
And
very
someone by the
outstanding
name
job.
of someone
Sorry.
by the name of Sister Mumbwa Simon says, thank you, everyone.
And again, special thank you to the staff of IKTV for the job that they did. Well done. And we appreciate the collaboration that we're working with. Thanks to Mario and his team and NAMS.
Thanks so much.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. And please do one thing, get home safely. And when you get home, have a drink on me.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Wonderful discussion by ex-teachers. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The recording has
all.
stopped.
Some of us are home and don't have to travel to go anywhere.